Okay, so this is a disclaimer for the entire video. It is freezing in England. North of England, not stop raining all day. I am freezing, so I will be wearing a blanket. Just a heads up. So, I read 5.5 books this month, which is amazing for me. I've probably mentioned it all the time. You're probably sick of listening to it. I only tend to read 2 a month. And so, well, yeah. So, 5.5 books for me is fantastic. I did say in my last video that I wasn't sure whether to class The Goldfinch as one that I had read because I hadn't finished it at that point, still haven't. And I don't really know if it can class as one of the books I've read this month if it isn't finished. So that's where I got the half from. Not technically halfway, but you know. So what I want to do is I really want to talk to you about my goals.
So obviously I've said I want to set the goal where I read every day for the year. And that's something that I think I can definitely do, but it's not really something I can measure per month whether I've done it, other than just say I have done it or not. So the goals that I'm going to discuss here with you are the 3 goals that I've set for myself. And hopefully each month I can find books that fit into all of them. If not for all of them, then at least a lot. So the first goal that I wanted to do was I wanted to read a mix of genres. And I definitely think that I've done that this month. In the 5.5 books that I've read, the first one, The 39 Steps, I would class that as a farce as well as a mystery. Peter Pan, I'd definitely class that as a young adult, maybe. If definitely not a young adult, then absolutely a fantasy genre. And then The Tattooist of Auschwitz would be definitely a historical fiction and a romance. And The Goldfinch, up to now, I would class that as a drama or a Bildungsroman, which, if you don't know, that means a book that follows a character through their formative years as they grow as a person. And I definitely think The Goldfinch fits into that. Out of Sight is a thriller. And Airport Code Red, also a thriller, but I read a lot of thrillers, so I've not included those 2 in this section because I wanted to read a varied genre that are not part of my typical. So those are the 4 that I think fit in with the mix of genres. When it comes to books that have done my book challenge, you don't really know what my book challenge is, so it is quite difficult to tell you. However, I'll just give you the 3 that I have done so far that fit into this category. I have included The Goldfinch despite it not being done because it will count once it's finished. So, the books that I've put in for my book challenge this month, I've put The Goldfinch down for a book that is 500 plus pages, which it is 864, so I will class that as being done in January and February, really. I think I'll have to class that as a February book once I finish that, because with it being January at the moment, you can't really say that that counts because I haven't really finished. So that's a bit of a cheat, but never mind. The next one is Peter Pan, and that is a book that was published over 100 years ago, which I think definitely counts. Peter Pan was published in 1904, so definitely over 100 years ago. And I think it fits quite easily into this category. So I'm glad that that one's included. The next one, bit of a cheat, bit of a cop-out, but still works, is Out of Sight, James Patterson, and that is 2 books by the same author. So by the point of that, I can't complete that technically until I've done 2 books by James Patterson, and I've only technically done 1. I can count the bookshot if I want to, but I'm really trying not to because I don't really want to include a bookshot. I don't think, even though they are actually his books, I don't want to include a shorter book. I want to make sure that I read full-length books in order for them to count. And then the last goal that I wanted to do is I wanted to read a James Patterson book each month, because as it is clear, James Patterson is my favourite author, and I want to make sure that I don't focus so much on reading different books that I forget about his books. So I decided to make that one of my goals, that I read at least one James Patterson a month, ideally more, but at least one. And I've read 2 this month. I've read Airport Code Red and Out of Sight. And those are my goals.
So what I did this month, I decided to put my books on a rating scale. I took that from a couple of other booktubers who did similar things, and I really like that idea. So I did it on the Goodreads rating scale, 1 to 5. I'm going to start with the lowest book and then work my way up to the top to some of my better books. So to discuss the first one, the first book is a 2-star book, and it is not a book you will have seen before. You may recall if I mentioned in the last video that what I was going to do to make sure that I'd 100% read 5 books, because I wasn't going to class The Goldfinch because it wasn't finished. I was going to read a smaller book, a bookshot, and I decided to read Airport Code Red. So James Patterson bookshot. If you don't know, bookshots are very small books. They tend to be less than 150 pages per book. This one was 121. And it's, the class it is all thriller, no filler. So it's just complete action all the time. There's no character building, there's no world building, nothing like that. It's just action from the off and right up until the very end. And a lot of the times that does work for books. But yes, I gave this book 2 stars. I really didn't like it. It's a James Patterson, and it's very rare for me to not like a James Patterson book, and even rarer for me to give it such a low rating. It was co-written by Michael White. I think Michael White took a lead on this because the writing style was definitely not typical James Patterson. I felt like on occasion there perhaps was something there of his, but for the most part there was no Patterson in there. It was definitely not my kind of book. And I want to stress that before I read the book, I had absolutely no idea what the plot of it was, I didn't know anything about the book. I randomly just picked it up off the shelf. It was a Christmas gift. And I decided to read that. And it's about terrorist cell planning a attack a busy airport in London, which don't really know what to say about that. There's nothing really to me. And it's about a retired SAS captain and an ex-Delta Force officer. I don't even know what that is. I'm not really big on anything to do with armed forces. Nothing to do with the army, the military, SAS things. I don't really know why. It's just not a subgenre that I connect with in any way. And reading about it, I don't really connect. I don't like it. I don't really find it interesting. And to be honest, I feel quite bad for not liking it. I feel as though like the work that people do in the armed forces and any sort of military, army, things like that, I feel like the work they do is so important. Everyone should read about what they do. Obviously this is a work of fiction, so it's not fully connected. But I always feel guilty, like if I don't like it, is that wrong? But I have to look at it as though people who don't like courtroom dramas or police procedurals or things like that, this just doesn't connect to me. I connect with a police procedural. I don't really connect with a courtroom drama. It's just swings and roundabouts, really. But yeah, the subgenre of the book being about terrorist cell and armed forces, things like that, none of that really interested me. Probably should have given it away from the cover of the book, shouldn't it? But yeah, it wasn't really for me. I didn't necessarily mind the writing style. It was just not what I expected, which made it bad. I refused to give the book a 1 star because I really don't think it deserved that. I think should someone be more interested in this type of genre or subgenre, then they might find it more enjoyable. I personally didn't, so I decided to make sure it got at least a 2-star, because I think the writing style was good, and I always feel bad about giving a book a negative review, especially on Goodreads, for its writing style, or not necessarily for the writing style, but overall, but just because it wasn't my kind of book, I always feel bad about that. But I really thought that I had to stay true to myself and how I felt, and I wasn't a big fan. And sometimes you get those, and I made it clear in the review, it just wasn't really for me. There was nothing wrong with the book. I made it clear in the Goodreads review that the book itself was actually written quite well. The genre itself just didn't appeal to me. And had I known beforehand, I probably wouldn't have picked it up. Probably the only criticism, other than the fact that I didn't like it, I had, was that it was very big on right place, right time. Now I'm really not a big fan of right place, right time. It's a trope that happens quite a lot, and for the most part it's quite successful. A lot of people do like it. Me personally, I just feel as though it's just too cliche, that two ex-armed forces, I don't even know if they are armed forces if I'm saying that, and they're nothing to do with the armed forces, Delta Force and SAS, if they're not armed forces, I do apologise. But yeah, anything related to armed forces, and the fact that two ex-armed forces men were in the exact right place just as this terrorist cell took over, it was too cliche. I'm really not a fan of that. I don't like books where someone happens to be in the right place at the right time. I can't think of a particular book, but another example is when the hero just accidentally appears at the right place to hear the villain say the plot. I'm like, really? That's the best way you're going to go about giving this information? That's the best way that we're going to find out about this? No. I really am not a fan of it. It angers me. It's a very big pet peeve of mine when it comes to reading. It feels sloppy. So yeah, that's the only criticism I had of that book. But it was my lowest rating. The genre of the book, I don't really know, to be perfectly honest. Action, thriller. We should know this. Genre of the book, I would say, is a thriller, with the subgenre of the armed forces thing, the terrorist cell. But yeah, overall, 2 stars from me. Now, the next book I want to talk about is one I've spoken about quite a bit since I started this channel, because it was quite heavily involved at the start of it, and it was the first book I read this year. A lot of you know I rated it 3 stars. The Tattooist of Auschwitz. Yes, I read this book. For those of you that don't know, it is a book. It's based off the true story of a man named Lael, and he gets put into Birkenau, a concentration camp. It's set in 1942. He gets put in a concentration camp. He ends up becoming the tattooist, and he becomes that. He spends months tattooing people. He met this girl who he had to tattoo her number on her arm, and from the moment he met her, he fell madly in love with her. The top of it even says, "I tattooed a number on her arm, she tattooed her name on my heart." And if you read the book as a love story, it's good. It's a good book. I like that. If you ignore all of the persecution of the Jews, all of the fact that it was set in Auschwitz, if you ignore that, it does come across as a love story. It's quite nice. It's a decent love story. But I had issues. For starters, I was not a fan of the writing style of the book at all. I felt like it was written in a way that was just not structured quite well. It didn't flow. It just very segmented. Things happened. It was just this happened, then this happened, then this happened, and it didn't really flow very well. There was nothing connecting it. And I don't really think the characters developed much over time. As I've mentioned many times in a lot of my videos, I always fall for the characters. I'm always a fan of the secondary characters more than the primary characters of the
Story
book
rather
rather
than
than
the main
the primary
characters.
characters are pretty much
just
safe
gonna go
throughout up until the end. And a lot of the characters I really did love. I felt as the story progressed, a lot of them progressed. Whereas with the main character, I don't really think they did. I feel as though Lael and Geeta, who was his love interest, who was the girl that he tattooed the name on her arm, the number, sorry, not the name. I feel as though they didn't progress much. Their story pretty much stayed the same. But at the same time, I still rooted for them to be together. I did still care about them in a sense of they're a cute couple and I like that. Oh, just kicked the camera, sorry. But what I didn't like about it is it felt a bit like a cheat. It felt like the big selling point of this book is the fact that it was a guy in Auschwitz that still found love, but they ignored a lot of the Auschwitz. Like, I feel as though it was there, everyone knew it was there, they didn't focus on it that much, and more than anything, I felt like when things happened that were directly related to Auschwitz, it was just very glossed over, and I was like, oh, I didn't get to deal with any of the emotional impact. And to be fair, when books do that and you don't get to deal with the trauma that you face, it usually makes it worse, and you're stuck with all of these feelings, and then by the end of the book you're just a bit of a blubbering mess. Whereas this book, you didn't really care about any of the characters, and I think that was down to the writing style. Now, I read the book and then went to the book club that I've mentioned, and my book club had a discussion about this, and it actually says in the back of the book it was written in a certain way because the story was from the memoirs of this man called Lael. He spoke to the author, and the way he told the story was like that. It was very segmented, and so she wanted to stay true to that version that was given to her by him, and that's why she stuck to it. But I just yeah, I don't really know what else to say. I just didn't really connect with it that much. I had a full discussion about that in my reading vlog for the 1st to the 7th. Please feel free to check that out. Next is my 4-star book. These are where the good books come in. Now, the first 4-star book I'm going to talk about, mainly because I have a physical copy of the book, is Out of Sight by James Patterson. I'm going to go through all of this again. It's the Cornwalls are gone, the Cornwalls vanished, blah, blah, blah. Been through all that. This book, 4-star. I thought it was a very good book. I thought the characters were very good. I thought the story progressed. The writing style was good. Very classic James Patterson. Also Brendan Dubois, if that's pronounced correctly. Great authors. I think they work quite well together. And this is the story of a woman called Amy Cornwall. She is, ironically, considering the first book I spoke about, she's an intelligence officer for... She works in the army, basically. Which, again, ironic. But she returns home from a tour in Afghanistan to find out that her husband and daughter have been kidnapped. She gets a phone call from a private number, and they tell her that she is being tasked with bringing them a person. She has to go states away to collect the person, bring them, and then they'll do an even trade. This person for her family. It's about her going through the trauma of, can she sacrifice a person for her family, and that journey of the lengths people will go to for their family. And it was quite a good story in that sense. Again, I don't feel as though I connected to her that much. I connected more to the other characters. Her husband Tom I connected to, her daughter Denise I connected to them. There's another officer that is looking for her because she's classed as being AWOL, and the other officer, Rosario, Officer Vasquez, excellent. I loved all of them. I really did love all of the characters. I even did connect with Amy more later on. I felt like it was very good. It was a good book. I'm doing a full review on this, so I don't really want to repeat myself over and over. I don't want to talk about it now. I spoke about it in my weekly vlog, and then I'm going to speak about it next week when I do the review, so I don't really want to go too much into that. Overall, great book, great writing style, great characters, 4-star, 100%. Okay, so the next book I'm going to talk about is another 4-star book, and I really enjoyed the book. It is Peter Pan. Now, I don't actually have a physical copy of the book. I read it via BookBox. I borrowed the book from the library and read it on my phone. So, Peter Pan. Yes, I love the book. I really did. The only things that disappointed me in the book were the pirates. I've mentioned that in my last weekly vlog. I felt as though I love the pirates so much in the Disney version, and I've said it's a natural instinct to compare the books. You don't want to, because you want to take the book for what it is, separate, the original, but you do compare, and I did. And I disliked the pirates in the book. I didn't really like Captain Hook. I didn't really like Smee. Smee upset me. I love Smee in the Disney version. But yeah, that's the only part of the book I really didn't like. The Darlings, I didn't like them as people, but I didn't dislike the book because of it. I actually enjoyed the book more in spite of them, because my dislike for them made me like the other characters more. For example, Tinkerbell absolutely hated Wendy. I think it's kind of a known thing. Tinkerbell's Peter's little fairy friend. And I love Tinkerbell more because I was like, yes girl, I hate Wendy too. I relate. Deeply relate to that. Peter, I loved him. I really did. Peter is one that I love. I don't think anyone could not love Peter Pan. A lot of people that have said they didn't like the book, they just felt it was very childish, and I'm like, well, he is a child. But it comes across that way, and it was written so well. The author of the book is fantastic. He writes the book in a way that not only talks about the book, but he jokes. He makes a lot of jokes. He says, I'm going to do this now because that person is quite annoying. And I'm like, I like that. It's very well good. It's very good. The author from the start mocked Peter all the time, and I found that really funny as well. I think there was one, I don't really know where it is in the book, but he said, Peter would have thought this had he thought at all, but he never does. I paraphrase that, of course. But yeah, I just think the story itself was so well written. It was an excellently written book. The author of the book was fantastic. The character of Peter was fantastic. Tinkerbell was fantastic. The Darlings were well done. I didn't like them, personally, but at the same time I feel as though perhaps you're not meant to really love them. Like, you're meant to see the difference. And I think that's what I liked them for. Despite the fact that I didn't like them as people, I liked them because it made me like Peter so much more, and it made me like the inhabitants of Neverland so much more, because they did not belong. They didn't fit in. They weren't that great people. I really didn't like them. Wendy, I despised. She was the one I hated the most. I really felt Wendy was very, very up herself. She was very much trying to be mature, and she neglected the fact that she was a child as well. But she tried so hard to be mature, and often berated Peter, made him feel stupid for not knowing things, for being immature, for being a child, because she was the lady. And I'm like, same age, love. I felt maybe if you read it as a younger person, you get it, but me, I'm 24 now. Perhaps I'm too in my prime for that. but yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Wendy. Really do not like her. But that's the only thing I didn't like. Now, I don't want to give it away. I refuse to give it away. But the ending of Peter Pan really was perfect. That's the thing that got it its 4 stars, because I was enjoying the book, but I wasn't so enticed by it. I was like, yeah, I'd class it as a 3-star. And then the ending happened, and the ending was just so perfect. I don't think it could have ended in another way. It was such a fantastic way to end, and I fell in love with the book in the last few lines, and it means a lot to me. It's the type of book that I actually think I could potentially reread that in the future. Knowing how it ended, knowing everything, I have fallen in love with the characters, and I've fallen in love with the book. And it's a book I didn't think I'd ever fall in love with because, again, comparing it to the film, you try not to. I did not like the film. I hated the film. The only part of the film I liked were the pirates, which is why I held that close to me when I was reading the book, because I thought, I'm really not going to like this. The only thing I'll like are the pirates. I'm going to vision them as that, and then they were nothing like that. But I really loved everything else. So it was a very confusing book for me. Emotionally, I went in thinking I'm not going to like this and ended up falling in love with it. And I don't even know what to explain about the book. It was just perfect. Some quotes from there were phenomenal. But that ending, honestly, if you have not read it, go ahead and read it. Honestly, read it for the ending alone. Because when you get to that end, you just think, of course, there was no other way that could have ended. That ending is perfect. And for me, it really, really was. And I want to give a shout out to Merphy Napier for actually making me read the book by telling me how much she loved it. I never had any interest in reading it, but then she said that it was her favourite and that she loved it and she'd reread it a few times. And I think it was that passion, that love for the book. And I thought, you know what? I dislike the film so much, I want to give it a go because I want to feel how she felt. And honestly, thank you for that, because I have fallen in love with the book. It was an amazing book. I don't think it was great enough for 5 stars from me. I feel as though personally I like a lot of books. See, now I feel like the way I'm talking about it, I should have rated it higher. No, I'm sticking with my rating. I have to stick with the rating. I have to give it 4. It was phenomenal. The ending was perfect. Everything else was good. It was fantastic. It was very well done. The ending was perfect. But it didn't warrant 5 stars. Now I'm struggling. I don't know what to do. No, it's 4 stars. I'm sticking with it. The ending, phenomenal. The ending made it so high. It was fantastic. End of story. Now, on to the 5-star book. I only gave 1 5-star. And it's not even a book. It was the 39 Steps. I've said I absolutely love this. It's about a man called Richard Hannay, and he goes to the theatre one night. He meets a woman. She has to go back to the flat that he lives in. She goes. She tells him about a plot called the 39 Steps. And then she is murdered. And then he goes on the run for her murder, whilst at the same time trying to uncover the mystery of the 39 Steps. And I said, I've seen this performed before. It's a farce. The play itself is a farce. The script is hilarious. And it's a bit of a drama and a bit of a thriller and a bit of a mystery, but it's a farce ultimately. And it was fantastic. I absolutely loved it. It was probably one of the best scripts and books, just whatever you class it as, it was the best thing I'd read this year. It was absolutely phenomenal. It was written so well. I did debate not including it because not technically a book, but I felt as though it was justified being here. I don't even know. I felt as though I'd have so much to say about it, but now I just feel as though everything's been said. It was summed up. It was perfect. That is the only way I can sum it up. I don't think any part of it could have been better. So, yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh no, there's not. There's one book. There's one more. Never mind. The Goldfinch. Forgot all about this. So I'm not really going to say much on the Goldfinch because I feel as though that will be in next month's wrap up. So I don't really feel as though I want to repeat myself. So I think all I'm going to say about it is very good. Really enjoying it. Kind of going hand in hand with what I said in my last vlog. It did peak a little bit, had a bit of a dip, and I struggled. For now, what I'm going to do for now is just give it a temporary rating, where I think should it continue at the current rate it's going, what I will rate it as. Up to now, I'm torn. See, you can't really give halves. I can't give 0.5s on Goodreads. Whereas I think because of the little dip, I want to give it like a 4.5. If that dip was the only thing, then it will go up to a 5. Should the dips continue and I really dislike it, it'll go down to a 4. I feel as though that's the only way to describe the book. And I really hope that the dips discontinue, because I really do love the book. I hope it carries on. Still 283 pages in of 864. Best get reading. So that's all really from my wrap up, and the irony, I am wrapped up. Oh, I make myself laugh. So yes, that is it from the wrap up this time.